Okay, so with this new CTP crafting event going on where you can get yourself a mighty, regular, or brilliant CTP of destruction, I've had a lot of people reaching out to me on Discord asking who they should consider for their CTPs of destruction. I did a stream earlier today and I believe about 4 or 5 people came through and they were asking the same question as well. So what I want to do for this video is give you a list of about 14 or 15 characters that I would consider for a CTP of destruction, whether it's a normal, mighty, or brilliant, and I want to let you know the reasons why. Okay, so that being said, let's jump right into it. The first character I'm going to put on the list, even though this list is not really from best to worst, is actually Hela. And the reason for that is Hela is a really good DPS, and if you have a mighty destruction, you could give her strike on that mighty destruction and it will make her amazing for PvE content. But then at the exact same time, you will give her 2 of the things that she does not have in her kit in this new uniform: immunity to guard break, and she's able to penetrate super armor, barrier, shield, damage immunity, and invincibility. This is really essential because of the fact that she doesn't have iframe ignore and she only gets penetration when you pop off her tier 3. So if the enemy has a lot of skills that have damage immunity and invincibility, a lot of times Hela will be hitting if you don't have a destruction on her in PvP, and she won't be doing any damage at all. So this is something you need to consider for Hela if you want her to be a PvP character and then still do damage, really good damage in PvE. You could also just decide to make her as toxic as possible and then just give her a regen. However, if you want the best of PvP for your Hela and you still want to do some PvE damage, you could easily go with something like I have on my Heimdall and go for all attack and defense instead of going for the strike damage. Heimdall is also a character that I'm going to be recommending today for the CTP of destruction. He's really good with it. The penetration helps him a lot. The immunity to guard break is nice. The extra defenses and attack is really useful for Heimdall. So I'm going to recommend that you guys consider Heimdall for a CTP of destruction. I personally find it to be the best CTP for him. He does okay in PvE, but PvP is where he's really going to shine. More specifically, in Alliance Conquest. So do consider that if you like Heimdall, or if you want to use him in Alliance Conquest or a little bit in Timeline Battle. I've made videos on Heimdall clapping up the likes of ShangChi, so he's no slouch. Okay, don't sleep on him in this uniform. He is a beast. Next character I want you guys to consider is actually Cersei. Cersei is really powerful. I currently have her with a CTP of energy just because I don't have that many mighty destructions laying around. Eventually I will be swapping this over to a destruction, and the reason for that is Cersei is very strong for PvE, but if you pick up her artifact, she's a powerhouse for PvP as well because of the fact that she can revive, and when she revives, she always uses her awaken skill, and her awaken skill does a ton of damage. It's in most cases enough to one-shot the enemy. However, if she revives and the enemy uses a skill that has immunity or invincibility, Cersei has no way of getting through that. You can see for yourself from her skills here, she has no penetration at all. So in order to ensure that every time she revives, you get the most out of your artifact in PvP, whether it's Timeline Battle or Alliance Conquest, it's a good idea to consider giving her a CTP of destruction. You could double dip and do something like I did with Hela for Cersei, where you get the strike damage, which makes them a powerhouse for PvE content, but you have the immunity to guard break, which is very good, plus the penetration to make it so that your Cersei always one-shots with her awakened skill. So definitely got to recommend Cersei. The next one that I got to put on this list because I find him to be very good in Alliance Conquest is actually Iron Man. Iron Man. Absolutely love him in Alliance Conquest, especially if you pop the nuke and their HP is low. He does so much extra damage. He can pretty much one-shot anyone. So giving him immunity to guard break and the penetration is really good, because if you take a look at his skills 1 through 5 and also his passive, he actually has no penetration until he gets his tier 3 skill. However, in PvP, it's very unlikely that Iron Man is going to survive long enough to get off his tier 3 skill on a regular basis. So for me, I generally use him with somebody that's gonna make him stay alive a little bit longer. For example, let me go down here and I'll show you Wenwu. So I usually use Wenwu with my Iron Man because when he gets debuffed, you can see right here, villain allies will recover 10% of their max HP for 5 seconds. So it'll make it so that my Iron Man stays alive a lot longer because he's going to recover 50% of his HP because Iron Man is now a villain. However, to make him kill faster, if you use him in Alliance Conquest, I would say give him a CTP of Destruction. And if it's a mighty one, you're going to get back some of the damage that you're losing from the CTP of Energy, which was before was the best CTP for Iron Man. I've seen some of you guys using him with Rage. You can use him with Rage, but you get more consistency and it's easier to proc with him, I guess. But if you want the most damage possible, and Energy is the best. However, if you want the best of both worlds, because he does have some PvP value, you can go with a Mighty Destruction, give him Strike. The Strike is going to buff him against boss types, and then the Penetration is going to come in clutch to make him kill faster, especially if their HP is low. Next one I gotta recommend here is actually War Machine. War Machine does really well in Alliance Conquest. If you put them together with Hulkbuster and Rescue, that team is a monster. They can take down Thanos, Jean Greys, Sentries, you name it. But if you look at Rhodey's skills, you'll notice, just like Iron Man, his 1 through 5, no penetration. Again, on his passives, no penetration. So what I would recommend is you swap him over to a CTP of Destruction because he doesn't get penetration until he gets his tier 3. And in PvP, it's very, very unlikely that you're going to survive long enough to consistently, again, consistently, right? If you get it off 1 in 10 fights, that's not consistent. So you can't really rely on this. And if they have immunity, which everybody these days have immunity and invincibility on their skills, right? So not to mention he doesn't have iframe ignore, right? So I would suggest if you want to use him in Alliance Conquest and you have a bunch of destructions laying around, roll a couple of them with Strike. Keep him good for PvE because he's the beast there, but then you can double dip and make him a monster for PvP content, okay? That's what I'm going to recommend. The immunity guard break helps as well, and he works really, really well with the machine team. Extra HP, extra defense, extra attack. He's a great support, but I don't think you should relegate him to just being a support. You should keep him as a top tier DPS, and I believe the CTP of Destruction is the best for him. Once I get more destructions in my inventory, I will definitely consider doing a comparison so you guys can see how he does and how much damage he's losing, if any at all, right, in PvE. But at some point I will change him over to a CTP of Destruction, guaranteed. Okay, next one, since we're already on the machine, we're talking about Hulkbuster. Thick boy, thickums. I've been testing him out. I tested him previously with the Destruction, and then since I used that Destruction to reforge to try and get a Brilliant, which I believe it failed. Actually, no, I think it succeeded. I think that's the one Brilliant I have. But anyways, I tried him with the regen now, and honestly, I'm liking the Destruction better because if you take a look at his skills, you'll notice that, yeah, no penetration. So that's kind of a problem. He can live longer now with more HP than ever, especially if you put him on the machine team. But his lack of penetration is allowing the enemies to live too long, and if they get off their tier 3, yeah, even though he's thick, they can beat me. So I'm gonna swap him over next time I get some destructions in my inventory, and I'll probably go with Strike. No, I won't go with Strike. I'll go with Strike for War Machine, and I'll go with all attack and defense for him because I don't really use him in a World Boss Legend like that. I usually only use him as a leadership, right? So and by the way, he still has that amazing HP passive. So you stack this with Rhodey, man, it's nuts. Like 75% more HP. It's amazing, right? Also, take a look at his awaken skill. You'll see that he does not have penetration anywhere in his kit at all. So if they just keep chaining damage, immunity, and invincibility, he's gonna have a hard time getting rid of them. So for him, definitely think it's better to go with the Destruct. The Warriors of the Sky, all of these guys, Sunbird, Blue Dragon, and I forgot to put what's his name, Shadow Shell up here, but Shadow Shell as well. The best thing for all of these guys is a CTP of Destruction, and I have one on all of them simply because it gives them penetration, and none of them have penetration, and they can almost, I would say 95% of the time when they revive from Sunbird's passive, they can almost kill any character no matter who they are. So you want to give them the penetration so that their venomous roar or whatever they want to call this awaken skill for all of these guys one that goes off, they just kill everything. The Warriors of the Sky, 100% the best thing for them is the CTP of Destruction, nothing else. If you care about AC, that is. If you don't use them in AC, don't give them anything, because besides that, they're not really useful for anything. Next thing, Yelena, probably one of the best characters in this list. If I was gonna make this like a ranking, she would probably be second to Hela, if not first, for the Destruction. I have an energy on her, but the first chance I get, I'm gonna swap her over to a Destruction, because her penetration is on her Awaken skill. It's 90%. It's really, really good, but you have to get to that first. And Yelena is really strong, so if she has penetration, she can kill before she gets to that Awaken skill. So if you give her penetration, she's gonna kill a lot of people. By the way, don't forget, she has iframe ignore on her 1. So that's really, really good. Captain Marvel. I have agreed on my Captain Marvel, but I honestly think Destruction could work really, really well for her as well, because of the fact that she doesn't have any penetration. You can see for yourself from the passives and stuff. So even though I have greed for the heals, I think if you want to kill faster, because she's really tanky, if you pick your fights carefully and choose villains, because of this uniform bonus, they're not going to do that much damage to you. And especially if you put her together with Wenwu and give her the debuff removal / healing leadership, you don't have to go with greed. You could go with Destruction, give yourself the penetration, and then you would still get the heal that you're going for with greed, because she doesn't get penetration until she pops her tier 3, and it's only for 3 seconds, which is really, really bad. You can see that now that the Destruction is better, where you can use it in both pieces of content, whether it's PvE and PvP, and you don't really have to sacrifice too much. You can see a lot of characters, a lot more characters are on the table now. Now, Cortex Glaive is a very interesting one because of the fact that he's ABX meta currently. So if you care about ABX, you gotta run him with a rage, otherwise you're not gonna hit consistently over 7 million. I'm just saying, right? I think you would be able to get close to that, especially if you're using Bullseye. You might still be able to, but it won't be as consistent as if you were using rage. But if you don't care about ABX and you want to make this guy really toxic, you can give him a Destruction and he's going to be really, really good for Alliance Conquest, because if you look at his skills, just like the other characters that I'm putting on this list, he doesn't have penetration, so that's a problem. And look at his Awaken skill as well. You can see he doesn't have any penetration. So if he pops his Awaken skill, which is his most powerful skill, right, and then they put up damage, immunity, or invincibility, guess what happens? He does like no damage, bro, like no damage, and then they just kill him. And then if he revives and then does it again and they put up immunity, guess what? They just survive. But if you had penetration, guess what? They die. So this guy, really, really good for Alliance Conquest because of the revive mechanic and that strong Awakened skill. So Destruction, definitely something you can consider if you don't care about ABX. Now the next character is Rescue, and there's 2 ways you can go about building Rescue. You can give her a CTP of Destruction because she doesn't have penetration on any of her skills. You can see, just like Hulkbuster, she needs the penetration to do damage to people if they put up immunity, invincibility, or any of that stuff. However, I decided, and I am going to stick to this, to give her a CTP of Authority. Once I get around to it, I'm going to give her Steel to make her as tanky as possible. And the reason for that is, if Rescue dies, your team becomes very, very vulnerable, right? For me, I generally use Rescue's leadership when it comes to Alliance Conquest, and then Rescue's also there because the longer she's alive, the more she's going to heal your machine team and make them even more toxic. Look carefully at this 3rd skill. Allies recover 35% of their max HP, and it removes all debuffs for 5 seconds every 7.5 seconds. So the longer Rescue's alive, the more she's gonna put up the plasma shield, keep removing debuffs, and keep healing your Hulkbuster and your War Machine, who already have a lot of HP, a lot of attack, and a lot of defense. She is a key part of this machine team, right? Her leadership and that debuff removal. So I'm not really putting her on the team to do damage, but if you wanted to, you could. She is viable for a CTP of Destruction. Now, you should not be here, Athena, because you're a rage character. But anyways, ShangChi, he's one you could consider. However, most people use ShangChi for PvE with a rage, or they use him with a mighty CTP of Authority because they want to make him a tank for AC. I get it. but you could consider giving him a CTP of Destruction, because if you look at his skills, until he gets to his tier 3, he doesn't have penetration. He has iframe ignore on his 3rd skill, but it does not penetrate anything. Take a look at his 4th skill, same thing, no penetration. 5th skill, no penetration. Passive doesn't include any penetration. You actually have to get to his tier 3 and then you get 80% penetration for 13 seconds. So ShangChi is viable for a CTP of Destruction if you wanted to, but do keep in mind you are sacrificing some survivability to do it. So he could kill faster, but he can also die faster. But if you wanted the best of both worlds, I would say possibly the CTP of Destruction is better to go with than what I have on him. But ultimately, I believe I am going to switch over to a CTP of Authority with Steel on it when I get more CTPs of Authority. So that's going to be it pretty much for the characters that I would recommend for the CTP of Destruction. There's a couple other characters in my roster, but honestly, I think these are the cream of the crop, if you will.